There it is.
You guys have better hearing than me. Good morning. This May 18, 2022 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order. The board continues to meet hybrid, as you can see today. For those of you here live, please ensure that you turn off your cell phones or any other electronic devices so we can have a productive, efficient, and effective meeting. For those attending virtually, please keep yourself on mute until you're recognized by the board. At this time, I will ask that our clerk, Ms. Celeste Amato, for any corrections, additions, and noted abstentions on today's agenda. Madam Clerk, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. This morning, we have no changes or corrections to the board agenda. We received a protest for an item on page 201, Bureau of Procurement, B506506, Emergency Vehicle Lighting and Accessories. That protest was received from East Coast Emergency Lighting. We have the following deferrals or withdrawals. Page 80 through 81, item number 27, Bureau of Procurement. Contract number B5000-5154, Citywide Violation Towing Services. This item is being deferred at the request of the Comptroller. Page 81 through 82, item number 28, Bureau of Procurement. Contract number B5000-5017, Background investigation. This item is being deferred at the request of the President. Page 90, Bureau of Procurement, Payment of Invoices. Contract 08000 to CoStar Group Incorporated is being deferred at the request of the Comptroller. Page 172, Department of Housing and Community Development. Lease extension, Redwood Apartment Air Parcel. This item is being withdrawn by the Department of Housing. Page 201, item number 1, Bureau of Procurement, B5000-6506, Emergency Vehicle Lighting and Accessories. This item is being deferred at the request of the Bureau of Procurement. Items that will be moving to the non-routine agenda this morning on page number 4, Department of Audits, the biennial performance audit of the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services. Page 124 through 126, Department of Public Works, 10-year solid waste management plan. And page 204 through 205, item number 9, Bureau of Procurement, B5000-6097, asbestos abatement services. A protest was received from Compliance Construction and Remediation Incorporated. And items moving to the routine agenda, item page 34 through 35, items number 1 and 2 for the Health Department personnel employee contracts will be on the routine agenda. And we have the following abstentions. The Honorable Mayor Brandon Scott, page 40 through 42, Office of the Mayor travel requests. Page 131, Health Department agreement with Johns Hopkins University. Page 134, Health Department agreement with the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Page number 135, Health Department agreement with the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. Page 136, Health Department agreement with Johns Hopkins University IPC. Page number 137, Health Department agreement with the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. For the Honorable President Nick Mosby, pages number 5, City Council Bill 22-0209. Pages 6 through 7, City Council travel requests. And page number 99, Police Department intergovernmental agreement with the Office of the State's Attorney. For the Honorable Bill Henry, there are no abstentions. City Solicitor James Shea, there are no abstentions. And for the Director of Public Works, Jason Mitchell, there are no abstentions this morning. That concludes my items, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to approve or adopt the opening statement that was just read by our clerk.
So move.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The opening statement is now adopted. At this time, I will ask the board to turn its attentions to one item that was published on non-routine agenda. This item is page 80, number 28, Bureau of Procurement, contract number B50005154, Citywide Violation Towing Services. For this item, Comptroller Henry has requested to defer the award until June the 1st meeting. Since this item has been deferred once already, an additional deferral will be required by the board. At this time, I'll take a motion to defer as well as a second.
So move.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is deferred. There's one additional deferral request I would like to draw the board's attention to. This item is number 28, Bureau of Procurement, contract number B50005017, background investigation. For this item, I've requested to defer the award until June the 15th meeting. Since this item has been deferred once already, the request by Comptroller Henry, an additional deferral is again required for this vote. At this time, I'll take a motion.
So move. Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. This item is deferred. I would now like to direct the board's attention to a memorandum from my office dated May 16, 2022, identifying matters to be considered as routine agenda items together with the corrections, additions, and abstentions, as well as no votes that's been noted by the clerk. I'll entertain a motion to approve all items contained in the routine agenda.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The routine agenda item is now adopted. The first item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 4, Department of Audits Biennial Performance Audit for the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services for fiscal year 2020 and 2019. The board is requested to note receipt of the audit. At this time, I'll turn the floor over to our auditor, Mr. Josh Pass, and his team to walk us through their audit findings. Mr. Auditor, the floor is yours.
Morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, honorable board members. My name is Josh Pash. I am the city auditor, and today I'm here to present the biennial performance audit of the MOHS. Sorry. Next slide, please. So I will run through the audit objectives, the relevant parties, identified risks, scope, methodology, findings, causes, risks, recommendations, and the status of the prior findings. Next slide, please. Audit objective was to determine whether the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services has effective and efficient processes and procedures and policies in delivering MOHS's permanent housing program to meet MOHS's primary goal and strategic plan to reduce homelessness. And then we also followed up on the prior findings. Slide. The relevant parties were the Continuum of Care, also known as the Journey Home in Baltimore, an independent entity comprised of stakeholders responsible for coordinating services to eliminate homelessness, selection of ranking of contracted providers, review of underperforming providers, MOHS responsible for the administration and oversight of federal awards, provider reimbursements, and program operations, and then the providers who provide the services to the homeless population. The stakeholders include government agencies, organizations that serve homeless people, persons with experience of homelessness, funders, health and behavioral systems, advocates, affordable housing, developers, education systems, and others interested in ending homelessness. Slide, please. We identified the following risks. Baltimore City's homeless population are not being served in a timely manner. These are potential risks, not risks that were necessarily discovered in the audit. Identified inadequate permanent supportive housing inventory. The subrecipients are not providing adequate housing and quality services, providing services to clients who are not qualified for the program. This program is primarily funded by HUD, management override risk, conflict of interest, and data security risk. Next slide, please. Is that the scope slide? So the scope was fiscal years 2020, 2019. And during our pre-planning, we came up with the following questions. Is COC in compliance with HUD guidelines? Do clear roles exist between the COC and MOHS? Is COC providing and meeting its deliverables? Are the processes for application review, approval, and placement of clients in permanent housing effective and efficient? And identifying MOHS's processes for identifying housing inventory and inventory and adjustments. The audit methodology. We reviewed rules and regulations, policies and procedures, and the charter, which are specified in the audit report. We interviewed key individuals from MOHS and the COC, and then we identified related risks and evaluated the internal controls over the administration of MOHS's permanent housing program. Next slide, please. Our findings were as follows. The process to move individuals into permanent housing requires significant improvement to reach the 30-day goal established by the National Alliance to End Homelessness, which is also MOHS's goal. The current processes to transition individuals into permanent housing is not efficient. We noted that the median days to transition someone into housing is 158 days, and the average days is 248 days. And as mentioned, MOHS's goal is to have that number be 30 days. We noticed that there are no processing controls to validate client-submitted information for permanent housing services. For causes, we noted the absence of adequate and available housing inventory. These are the causes of not meeting the 30-day goal. The extended time it takes to acquire the necessary personal identification information and protected health information. This is understandable as we are dealing with the homeless population. The lack of review of financial and housing utilization data throughout the year to identify underperforming providers with inadequate housing inventory. In other words, this is looking at our suppliers who are providing the housing and identifying which, how to improve it and which ones are working effectively and efficiently. We noted that 38 of 140 non-single resident occupancy housing units, or 24%, and 37 of 56, or 66% of SRO housing were declined by homeless clients when offered. We also noted as a cause the absence of monitoring of key activities and milestones from the application for homeless services to housing placement and the age of client activity, which, for example, would be 1 year and greater, 9 to 12 months, tracking those milestones. And this resulted in not being able to identify specific causes of the delay in the process. Example, time logs and performance gaps. So, for example, we are not analyzing how long it takes for each stage of the process to identify if certain ones are causing the bottleneck. Personal identification includes birth certificates, social security cards, and diagnosed disability evidence of the length of time in homeless status, which are requirements by HUD. For the absence of monitoring and key activities, we noted that currently detailed and ad hoc reports of the time required to complete key activities milestones are not produced, while periodic reports required by HUD are produced. Next slide, please. Okay. For the risks, we notice there's an increased risk of services being provided to ineligible individuals that ties to having difficulties of getting that information to determine if they're qualified or not qualified, which I mentioned before. And then we noted that Baltimore City is in a challenging position. We noted on the chart that the city has the largest homeless population in the state of Maryland. According to the Maryland 2019 Annual Report of Homelessness, the city accounts for 11,798, or 39% of the statewide homelessness population served. Additionally, out of the largest 5 COC jurisdictions in the state, the city has served nearly 5 times the amount of clients as the next most active COC. Montgomery County, which is the largest COC jurisdiction in the state, has a population that exceeds the city by more than 400,000 people. However, it serves a homeless population that is 9,310 less than the city. As of July 21, the city requires a living wage of $12.59 an hour, which equates to approximately $26,000 per year for full-time work. The average rent for an apartment in the city is $1,432, or $17,000 per year. These facts highlight the relationship among affordable housing, income, and risks of homelessness. Next slide, please. The audit came up with the following recommendations. For Director of MOHS to form a work group with the Journey Home, also known as COC, Department of Housing and Community Development, and other stakeholders to obtain a list of Baltimore City landlords and initiate outreach programs to increase the inventory of permanent housing. Number 2, to analyze affordable housing projects and developments for inclusion in the inventory. and subrecipient permanent housing performance throughout the year to determine underperforming projects. In other words, if we have a provider who is underperforming, to identify those and potentially transfer funds to other providers. Next slide, please. Other recommendations: continue working with Maryland Department of Health and Social Security Administration to identify ways to improve the current process of client information validation, which was one of the lags and delays in the process. And we recommended a couple of processes related to that to potentially look into getting an automated process. In other words, to confirm digitally the client reported name, date of birth, et cetera, in a timely manner. We also recommend periodic coordinated subrecipient meetings with clients and representatives from Social Security Administration and Maryland Department of Health, or potentially to fund positions that correspond to those to meet clients at shelters and subrecipient locations for validation of clients' information. These are all suggestions to address one of the bottlenecks. Next slide, please. Further recommendations are to increase and improve reporting of client activities from application through housing, to identify milestones and the number of days for key activities when issuing and providing permanent housing. We gave some suggestions that tracking the date from application to how long it takes to collect personal identifiable information and validate that, and the date that the housing is offered, and the date that the housing is accepted, and the date that is the client moves in. And then the corresponding recommendation is to monitor those dates and to identify time lags, performance gaps in that housing placement process. And then when those gaps are identified, to address those and resolve those, and to potentially make changes to the processes. The next stage of my presentation is review of the implementation of prior findings. So for the first finding, where it says MOHS does not document the annual monitoring of selected performance measures, this was not implemented. MOHS has not established policies and procedures for monitoring the number of outreach contacts reported by providers, nor were practices established until December 30th of 2021, which was outside of our audit scope, and we did not review that for efficiency and effectiveness. Finding number 2, there is no audit trail to confirm the number reported, and we also noted a lack of segregation of duties. Outreach workers have custody of services such as gift cards and providing services, and they also record these in the system to track these called Client Track. This also was found not to be implemented. The MOHS did not develop policies and procedures for reporting homeless outreach services, for purchasing, distribution, and storage and reconciliation of the gift cards until December of 2021, which was outside of our scope and was not reviewed by us. We also noted that the MOHS senior management is new to the role as effective June of 2021. We noted that the other prior findings were transferred to another agency and they were not followed up on this audit. Next, okay. We also issued a confidential management comment letter. This is a security-related recommendation, and it was communicated to appropriate DPW and city personnel as a confidential management comment letter use. And these security-related recommendations are omitted from this public report. The decision to exclude this information is based on Government Auditing Standard 2018, sections 9.64 through 9.66, reporting of confidential and sensitive information. Next slide, please. That concludes my presentation, and I will address any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Auditor. At this time, from board members, are there any questions or concerns? At this time, I call on you, Mr. Comptroller. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. Auditor. I wanted to put something in perspective. The audit found that it takes Mayor's Office of Homeless Services and the Journey Home on average 248 days to transition individuals into permanent housing, which is quite a gap from a goal of 30. But what I wanted to ask is, how does that timeline compare to similar jurisdictions across the country?
During our audit, we did look into other local governments, organizations, and state agencies of how they're addressing this. To note, HUD does not report this information publicly, so we did find a few government organizations with had average days of 180 days to place, 207 days to place, and 240 days to place.
Okay, so this is not an uncommon problem among similar jurisdictions trying to get to the aspirational but definitely necessary goal of 30.
It is definitely a stretch goal provided by HUD.
Okay, thank you. We're going to hear from MOHS, right? Okay,
Of course.
I have one question for them.
Mr. Auditor, real quick, when you come up with a recommendation, say like the recommendation for maybe a person that's assigned from a Social Security perspective or I forget the other agency to deal directly with the clients, what's the follow-up from the administration or that particular department? Do you have like a running list of all of the different audits that you do and those recommendations to kind of see if it's completed or not? How does that work?
We do have a list of recommendations to follow up upon. Typically for the biannual audits, those are followed up upon the 2 years later, and we do the follow-up audit. And then we do have a list for others that in between, and then sometimes we get inquiries to follow up on. So those are tracked through that process. If it's not a biannual audit, then we do have a running list to check. I do want to clarify one point. In order to maintain auditor independence, we do not direct agencies or any operational or government officials on what they need to do. The recommendations are simply recommendations. So if an agency has a process that they're working on that differs from a recommendation, all we're concerned is, does it cover the risk and how much does it cover the risk? So as part of the audit, the agencies respond with their management response. Like I said, if they don't use a recommendation, that's fine. We're just worried about addressing the risk.
Got you. So the previous recommendation gives you a roadmap when you come back around to see if it's been corrected. However, you can't explicitly tell them how to correct it. You can only provide them a recommendation to correct.
Correct. For each audit, the management responds to us with the finding and the recommendations, and they note whether they agree or disagree with the recommendation. Typically, if they have a concern about the finding, we work with them to make sure that we have a clear understanding and the finding is presented in a way that's accurate to both of us. In rare circumstances, if the agency disagrees and we both agree to the facts, then we will note that in the audit report. We do ask agencies that as the process is going, if they change directions from what they said in the audit response, to let us know so that when we do the follow-up, we're not looking for the wrong thing.
Understood. Thank you so much for that. Are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, thank you, Mr. Auditor. At this time, we'll hear from the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services. Is Director Augustine? Hello? The floor is yours.
Good morning.
Morning.
So, again, this is my first hearing. I didn't know if I take questions or just respond.
If you could just respond to the recommendations, what the agency has done to date to try to cure some of the issues found in the audit. What are the plan moving forward to help move us in the right direction?
Sure. So we worked with the Department of Audits on this particular audit. In terms of the findings laid out by Mr. Pash, we did respond to all of those. So in response to what was found in the audits, we do agree we have to work with our continuum of care. It is a federal requirement to receive continuum of care funds, which largely funds our housing projects within the city of Baltimore. This is about $25 million. And so it's important that we work with them. In terms of the timeframes, Mr. Pash is absolutely correct. Length of time homeless really varies from city to city. It's largely dependent on how much safe and affordable housing is in the community and how many rental assistance resources there are. At the time of the audit, we had pending requests for our ARPA requests, which would largely help to fill the gaps in there, and we were approved for that after the audit did come out. And so there is a finding in here in regards to working with the continuum of care, specifically on housing, working with landlords. That is all part of the plan and also supported by one of our ARPA requests to increase housing navigation, landlord recruitment, and engagement. In order for us to drive down the length of time homeless, and I can say in the 20 years that I've been working on this in the various cities, cities have trouble looking at efficiency, making sure that they're looking at the length of time homeless and where those milestones happen. Upon starting June 1st, I knew that was a milestone that our city had to hit. And so as we were working on the audit, we were also working on many of the things that the auditors were looking at and recommending. And so instead of just looking at permanent exits, we are looking at milestones in terms of how long does it take to get through the housing process from identification to lease up. That is tracked in our homeless management information system, which is a requirement of HUD and our COC funding. And so we do track those milestones within those systems, and that's reflected in our response. What we're doing a better job of working on is analyzing this data with our continuum of care and looking at what does it take to move people along through the process. One of the gaps that we identified within this process was vital documentation. Vital documentation is largely out of our control because we have to work with the MVA to get identification, Social Security for Social Security cards. And so knowing that it takes a while sometimes for vital documentation to be sent in, we created partnerships with Social Security Administration, MVA, to figure out how to quicken that process. Additionally, we took advantage of the waivers and some of the alternative identifications to make sure that we are speeding up that process. The other thing that we're lending to working towards shortening the length of time homeless is also doing case conferencing, which we instituted in December, where we're meeting with our shelter providers to ensure that upon someone coming in, we're starting to collect that information and then work with them to figure out what is the best housing intervention so that we can connect them to housing. And so all of this was, and we were working on this as we were working on the audit. I would say that prior to my time in Deputy Wells, we started on the same day, June 1st, that there were challenges to the system. We acknowledge the challenges to the system. These are not challenges we haven't seen in other cities. However, with this new investment of our ARPA funds, we've been working with our consultants at Community Solutions and Built for Zero, which is also reflected in our response to really take a critical look at our system and to make changes to improve upon it. We're working with them, the COC is working with them to ensure that we make those improvements.
Thank you, Director Augustine. At this time, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Mr. Baer?
Thank you, Madam Director, and thank you for your fabulous work. There's a couple of things I want to hit that you hit on. I think it'd be good for you to expand upon based on the auditor's fine work and the findings that he found. Talk about how your investments will directly help with units being available, the systems that will to help people get into those units, because we know this is a large issue for our community.
Okay. So when I started June 1st, I had the pleasure of working with Barbara Poppy, Matthew Doherty, and I think many of you are aware of the strategic investment plan, which really centered community engagement and involvement to figuring out the top priorities in our community that we have to work on to really make an impact on ending homelessness. This work resulted in 6 applications to the Office of Recovery Programs, really hitting on some basic points that we saw were critical gaps within our system and needed investment. One was the making sure that we have a safety net. As you know, Pender Hughes and Green Spring were 2 congregate shelters. COVID-19 demonstrated that congregate shelter really isn't the safest place, especially during a public health crisis. And so one of our applications is to establish non-congregate shelter, which is a safe reform supported by the CDC and HUD and we support as an intervention that we need in our community. Also, we wanted to focus on being able to quickly get people connected to housing. And so that means we needed to increase rental assistance resources and have those housing interventions there so that we can move someone along and have that support. But in order for us to also be successful, we had to increase the stock of safe and affordable housing. And so we're doing that twofold. One, through increasing housing navigation and landlord recruitment, working with the things that we already have in our community, and working with the housing sector on that, but then also building new and creating more permanent supportive housing. Our studies showed that we lack permanent supportive housing, and that's housing with the support services, and we were also severely underfunding it. Those support services keep people in housing. And so one of our proposals is the Housing Accelerator Fund, which we will work in partnership with the Department of Housing and Community Development. They're the ones that really are experts in capital and housing. And so it's important that we continue this partnership to build upon that. And then the other intervention that is missing in our community is diversion and rapid resolution. Not everyone's going to need an intense form of housing like permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing. Sometimes they just need a little help or to be reunited with family. And we need to do everything possible to divert someone from coming into the shelter system because we can solve or help figure out their housing crisis ahead of time. And if they do hit our shelter system, how do we get them connected to housing as quickly as possible? And so the last proposal, which we ended up combining diversion and rapid resolution into a flex fund, which gives us the flexibility to help in those needs because we know humans have various needs. They don't always need an intense intervention. Sometimes they need that light touch.
Thank you.
And just one other question, just because the auditor had a great slide about this, and I think it's important for us to talk about it more in a regional context. Is I saw that we dealt with 11,000 clients, but the point in time count was 2,000. Can you talk about how we work with our surrounding jurisdictions and the frequency in which we actually are serving clients from other jurisdictions and how that works, whether we refer them back or we just keep them, and how we all work together to deal with this issue of homelessness across the region?
Sure. And I think, and I've seen this in the many cities that I've worked in, typically your urban center is going to be a draw because your services are there. And so the reality is people experiencing homelessness are transient. If they hear of a service, they're going to go to it because they need the help. And so first and foremost, the city of Baltimore, we're here to help people. However, if they want to go back to the community that they lived in, so they want to go to Baltimore County or Anne Arundel County, we make sure that we can help get them there. Some of the vouchers we have are able to port to other counties, and so we work with various partners in those counties to help them get there. I would say that there is a lot of opportunity at a regional level to really make an impact. And, I'm still new, still learning, but meeting our partners in the counties, and we're having great discussions about ways we can work together.
Thank you. Any additional questions or concerns? Ms. Comptroller?
Thank you, Mr. President. There is one item in the audit I did want to focus on. The report mentioned that about 2/3 of the SRO housing units were declined by clients when they were offered. And my question was, has MOHS had a chance to sort of drill into that and survey the clients and find out, is the issue that SRO housing is just not as desirable a product, or is the concern how those such a large percentage of those units are not well enough maintained, or there's something, or not situated well? Is it specific to the units, or is it more a concept with the product?
I would say that we are doing analysis on our SROs and just housing in general. Speaking from experience in different communities, considering that there are other options out there, SROs are not always the first option people want. Typically, they're shared bathrooms or kitchens, and as everyone else wants, we want our own.
Right.
I understand why someone would not decline that unit. However, I believe in a diversity of housing stock within our community. I believe SROs do play a part in this. It's really identifying when we talk to that individual, what are your needs? What are you looking for? And some people in SRO would be a good option. It's just trying to identify who that person is.
And the reason I was curious about what the underlying cause was is, do the property owners who are participating still receive any level of payment even if they don't house clients?
So for projects that have rental assistance, it's based on if there's a person occupying that unit. And so if there isn't a person occupying that unit, it means that we can't reimburse them on that. And that's very clear when it comes to the COC funding. And so it's important that we work on that vacancy with our housing providers to ensure that they're able to maximize the award that they get from our federal funders, not only because we want people housed, but we also want our providers to be able to spend down the totality of the award
Sure.
that they receive.
But the reason I wanted to press on that is just to be clear that if there's no money going out the door to an SRO owner when people choose not to accept those rooms, then I can understand why there's no reason from MOHS's perspective to take those units off the list, because you want to provide the diversity of options. But if we are paying them any amount of money and just to be basically on the list of options that can be considered, that would be then a question of having to do the cost benefit of, is it worth paying that fee? So there are no fees, there are no administrative fees or anything going to the SRO property owners, even when their units aren't being selected.
I mean, there's typically with the budget, it will include categories of rental assistance, admin, depending on what is budgeted for it, because not all the projects are the same, could be operations. And even if they have vacant units, they have units that are occupied. And so the admin is important to ensure that they can keep the operation going. The last time I asked about what our vacancy looked like, from our known units, we had 9 SRO vacancies. And so even with the vacancies there, I think the thing that I want to impress upon the group is, yes, it's harder to place people in an SRO. It's not for everyone, but we have, from my understanding of the last time I asked, which was last week, we had 9 vacant units there. We haven't had a lot of permanent supportive housing in our community, just in general. And so I want to fill those 9 units, and I want to create more units, because that's the way we're going to be able to reduce and end homelessness in our community. And this is larger than MOHS. As I've explained, that this requires partnerships with our nonprofits, with the Continuum of Care, with DHCD, with various sectors within our community to be able to do this.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any additional, Mr. Solicitor, the floor is yours.
Yeah, 9 vacancies out of how many? How many were occupied?
I don't have that number off the top of my head in terms of how many units total, but I can get that to you.
Just ballpark. What are we talking about?
I don't want to say, because I don't want to, guess at it,
I
but
can't-
it's hundreds of units. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
we
get that,
have,
but
so.
So 9 is a small number. If it were 9 of 18, it wouldn't be as impressive.
Yeah, I mean, a majority of the funds that we receive from HUD through Continuum of Care, like I said, is 25 million. A majority of that is to keep people housed.
Good.
And so while we are talking about the 9 units and we want to fill them, we are keeping people housed month after month, year after year.
Great. That's what I want.
And if we don't receive those fundings, and that's, that's the concern in terms of the audit and why we do need to improve our length of time homeless, our ability to connect people to housing, because we want to show to our funders that we're making the best use of their funding and that we're getting as many people housed as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions or concerns? Oh, thank you so much, Director Augustine, for coming and presenting. You did a great job for your first time in front of the Board of Estimates. Thank you. Seeing no further questions or objections, the audit report will be noted. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on pages 124 through 126, Department of Public Works, 10-year solid waste management plan. I want to make it clear the board is not approving this plan today, but we're just opening up to the public for comment, as well as setting future dates for this public hearing. On that note, I'll recognize the Department of Public Works to explain the proposed amendments. I believe with us, we have Deputy Director Garbach as well as Ms. Marsha Collins. At this time, DPW, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Matt Garbark, Deputy Director, Department of Public Works. Before you is a request to conduct a hearing for considering amendments to our 10-year solid waste master plan. The state requires under state law and state regulations that every local jurisdiction have a solid waste master plan. This 10-year plan identifies the goals for managing the city's solid waste stream, summarizes the laws and regulations governing waste management, and describes the city government structure necessary to carry out the management. The plan will follow over the next 10 years, describes the anticipated future of solid waste disposal facilities, and the way we recycle residential, commercial, bulk, and other wastes are to be managed as well. This item would normally go to the city council as a mayor and city council resolution. However, we are going to be doing a complete rewrite of this plan next year. We had asked the Department of the Environment a number of months ago if we could wait until the new plan comes up to add some of the minor amendments that they're asking us to add. These are things like adding to the plan our recycling cart distribution, as well as noting 2 other waste transfer centers. The Department of the Environment a number of months ago said, yes, that was fine. And then in March, they said, no, it's not fine. And we have to go and actually update this. We can't go present the report for public comment until the language is reviewed, drafted, and the department finalizes and accepts it. We received that final acceptance a week and a half ago. So, and the deadline is June 1st, is what they asked. So we would normally do this through the city council. However, given the budget, given the season, the budget season coming up, we felt that that was too much of a rush and too much of a strain, and that using the Board of Estimates as the as a board that approves items for the city, that this was something that could be sufficient for just this one occasion. We will be coming back next year to the city council to completely redo the 10-year master plan. But for compliance with this one sort of unique situation because of timing, we thought that and received guidance from our council, our agency council, that this was sufficient to meet the needs of the Department of the Environment. Mr. President, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Collins. She can add some more detail to this if that's all right.
Morning, honorable members of the Board of Estimates. I am Marsha Collins. I'm with the Department of Public Works. I'm the Chief of the Office of Legislative Affairs. And I have with me today also Ms. Cara Murray, who is here from the Bureau of Solid Waste. She is one of our active members in promoting recycling and all waste diversion activities, which is going to be very important for our continued advancements for our waste stream. Recycling has been a strong concern by many advocates and by many residents who wanted to participate, who needed information to participate. And we saw the opportunity for a grant for our recycling carts that we felt would be the boost that would be needed to get people to begin recycling who had not done so before. Our little yellow bins that we had used in past that people purchased at cost really seem to be well utilized, but on windy days, rainy days, that doesn't work so well. And so we were very excited for the opportunity that we were awarded to assist with our recycling cart program. This is obviously an integral part of how we're going to achieve our responsibilities under state law to recycle at least 35% of our waste stream. So we, as the Deputy Director described, we had been in constant contact with the offices that we deal with under the Maryland Department of the Environment. They are the regulators for this part of the law, state law. For us, the challenge has been making sure we had this recycling cart program approved, came to the board with that opportunity, and then we were able to publicly discuss it. And so we wanted to, in our discussions with MDE, we said, look, this is a vital part of what we want to add into our solid waste management plan, and they agreed. But for whatever reason, they felt they did not want to wait for our rewrite in 2023. So unfortunately, we're here today to meet their deadline and then respectfully go back to the council as we traditionally do when we do our complete rewrite. What is contained in this document, we have taken the entire solid waste plan, which is about 70 narrative pages with charts and so on, and a lot of appendices. We made revisions throughout that document, and that document has been highlighted with all those changes in bold yellow. And with permission from this body, we will be posting it on our website and also reaching out to the individual council members to talk to them about what it contains and why it's there and what we're doing. And we will be hopefully back on June 1st to formally present the program. I did want to say that some of the changes that we made in the document was to update all of the activities we have been doing to encourage recycling. In addition to the carts, there was a grant that we got for an anti-contamination grant, which is very important for recycling. If it's contaminated, our recycling companies remove it from the waste stream, and we want our recyclables as clean as possible. So we have an anti-contamination grant that has oops tags that we put on people's which is a polite saying of, oh, you made a mistake. We don't take plastic bags in our recycling and other items to begin the education process as well as other information. Deputy Director Garbark did mention we have two companies who are in the process of getting a Maryland Department of the Environment permit to perform certain solid waste activities such as transfer station and materials management. And that, as part of that process, they have to do two things with the city. Does the zoning allow me to do this activity at this location? Here's what we're planning to do. And do we fit into your solid waste management plan? And so it's that third step that allows them to complete their permit process and to begin performing an expanded opportunity for accepting recyclables in one case and also construction and demolition debris in another. And we have determined that, yes, they certainly are compatible with our program, and we look forward to encouraging them to do so. And they have reached out to the surrounding communities where they're located and had a lot of meetings with them. And so they've done their due diligence and groundwork with the communities, and the communities are very accepting of their location in those areas. So that's a quick summary, and I would be more than happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you. Real quick, before we get into questions specific about the plan, has the council been briefed on the audible to go from typically coming to the council and running this through the Board of Estimates at this time?
Not as yet.
Right. Well, obviously that would be problematic for me as the person on this board that represents the council. You know, when we make changes like this, particularly administrative changes like this, I think it's important to engage the council, particularly when we're diverting from a normal course of action in which the council would take up to discuss. You know, obviously coming out of COVID, solid waste and the issues and concerns and efficiency concerns have been exacerbated, particularly as it relates to recycling. And, you know, I just think that this is a missed opportunity of developing certain level of partnership with something that we all agree upon. That's providing better services, core services to the citizens of Baltimore. It's the council that fields all the calls from their residents and their concerns. And when we don't have proper communication with the council as it relates to simple things as like this plan, that's really, really concerning. You know, I can't take any additional action on that. But I will say that the level of just lack of engagement and communication, not just from Department of Public Works, but this spans throughout several other departments, is simply unacceptable.
I respect that, sir. What I did want to do was make sure that this body was willing to entertain this request before reaching out to the council. That is on me, and I apologize. I will be speaking with all the council members going forward.
The reality is this is not a Marsha Collins issue. I wanted to be very clear. This is a consistent pattern that we've seen. It's nothing for you to apologize for. I just thought it's really important to put on the record that this is the first time the council's hearing about this. You know, as the representative on the council, you know, I have to publicly say that that's unacceptable.
Thank you.
Nothing.
I appreciate that, sir.
Are there any other questions or concerns from members of this board?
Just a technical one in terms of, you mentioned that you wanted the board's permission to post this information on your website. So that's going to be a separate motion that we'll make along with the hearing, or is that just part of the public hearing motion?
I think the public hearing is just noted. I think that
Okay,
that's the motion that we would probably take up.
okay.
I'm not sure. I mean, again, this is, we're doing this on the fly. So it was that the plan from the administration?
Yes, sir.
That's the
Yes,
plan.
sir.
I have it
It's
right.
ready to go.
All right, cool.
We haven't activated it.
I'm just going to note in passing that everyone's looking at the city solicitor.
Well, why don't we do this? I move that we approve a public hearing on this issue.
Okay, do
With
we need a motion for?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, just in
But
case.
if we pass it, then we've
Okay.
satisfied.
Perfect. Got it. So there's a motion on the floor?
Can I make a friendly amendment?
Sure.
Should we just combine that then, and that would include the public notice
Yeah.
that they would be doing on their website?
So amended.
All right, could you say the motion?
Yeah, so I move that we approve a public hearing, including the publication of the plan on your website, the DPW's website.
And I second. So it's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Are we good there? All right. For the public here and watching at home, note that the hearing on the proposed plan changes will be held as part of the board's regular scheduled meeting on June the 1st. The next item on non-routine agenda can be found on pages 204 and 205, number 9, Bureau Procurement, B50006097, Asbestos Abatement Services. A protest was received from Compliance and Construction Remediation Incorporated. Once again, we have Acting Procurement Officer, Ms. Keisha Brown. No. Is that Ms. Keisha Brown?
Sir.
Uh-oh, let's see.
Good
There we go.
morning.
Oh, there we go. That is Ms. Keisha. How you doing?
Well, thank you.
Pretty good. To speak on the contract at this time, the floor is yours, Ms. Brown.
Good morning, President Mosby, Mayor Scott, Comptroller Henry, and honorable members of the board. The Bureau of Procurement respectfully asks that the board award solicitation B50006097 asbestos abatement services to the listed vendors. The period covered is from May 5th, 2022 through May 4th, 2025 with 2 one-year renewal. The following awardees are listed: C&W Construction Company, Modulus LLC, Retro Environmental and Gold Services. This contract for a total amount of $10 million. As background, this solicitation was posted on City Buy, eMaryland Marketplace, and local newspapers. There were 11 bids received, 6 of which were found non-compliant. The awardees on February 2nd, 2021 were found compliant with the MBE goal of 27% and a WBE goal of 10%. I can speak to the protest if you'd like me to.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. We did receive 2 protests in regards to construction compliance and remediation at Atmos Solution, Inc. And it was found that both of those offers were found non-responsive in that they did not meet the MBE, WBE requirement.
Thank you. Is that it, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Oh, perfect. At this time, are there any questions, concerns from members of this board for procurement?
Yeah, no, I'll wait until after the project.
Okay, well, at this time, we're gonna get into the protest phase. We'll call up our only protester at this time, representative from Compliance Construction Remediation. Yes, if you could, sorry, sir, I do not have your name, so for your record,
My name is James.
you could step up in the mic, sir.
Hello, how are you?
Pretty good.
All right, great. How you doing? My name is James. I'm the operations manager for the company Compliance Construction Remediation. It's a company that my son owns. His name is James Lang also. We are a Baltimore-based business. We are actually Baltimore city residents, and we're active in the community. So it's surprising that you're saying that we are non-responsive as far as a minority contractor when I'm looking at the other people that received the awards for this contract are not, none of them are Baltimore city businesses that received it. So I put in the protest, basically I'll just give you the history. What happened, we submitted it, our contract, it's in August of 2020. And this type of contract, basically all it is a pre-qualifier to see what people are going to bid, to make sure that Baltimore City is getting the best type of contractors to bid, and especially asbestos abatement or any environmental, as I noted, the people talked about the restrictions and what is needed to be able to deal with it. So we submitted our package. Our package was accepted. At the time, it was on video, watched it. We were one of the 11 contractors that accepted. I followed up with the contracting purchaser person whose name was Mr. Anderson, and he said, I kept in touch with him. We went through all the phases. And then in January, he actually, just before he left, he said that he had received back from the MWBOO office who was qualified. She mentioned 5. She said 6 were found non-responsive. And she said 5 were, which they awarded 4. I don't know where the other person that should have received the award is. But when I spoke with Mr. Anderson, he actually said the reverse. He said 6 were found responsive and 5 weren't. When they initially awarded the contract, they put it out for recommendation. This was in March. There were only 2 contractors that were qualified to be able to bid. And with this contract, you have at least 300 tasks come out a year. So that would be a large amount for a small amount of contractors to do it. That's why they made it a multi contract award. So when I saw there was only 2, I said, this is not consistent with what happened during the bid construction meeting where they said it was going to be more. I put in my protest and I said that it should have been more. And then they said it was based on price. Well, it's IDIQ. So you put your line item pricing and then they put in imaginary numbers. Then you have your overall pricing and they make a decision who's going to be the first one for emergency responses. But then what happens is then we go with line item pricing. So when I put in my bid, I put in that, they held up, and now they just came back, and they added 2 more contractors. Okay, well, at first, it was just those 2, it's just what happened with that, but then the 2 that you added Retro, who is a contractor that's not a Baltimore City contractor. You added GoL Services, who's an Asian American contractor, who we competed against in DC, and they lost their DC MBE certification. And also, they've maintained for 5 years the other contracts. These, like you said, these contracts, they come out every 5 years or they come out every 3 years, then they give them a sentence. They've maintained that contract for five years. They've had issues as far as MBE participation. So, but one of the things is I never received a letter of non-responsiveness. And Mr. Anderson had said that he put together, once he got back from the office, the people that were not qualified, he put an email out. They sent it out. We never received that letter. We never received anything. Just when they put this new list out, I called the contracting officer, Mr. Bolu. Yeah, what's his name?
That's it. We know what you're talking about, sir.
Yeah, okay. So Bolu, I called him and I asked him, yeah, Bolu Oluwasu Oluwasuji. Mr. Oluwasuji stated that I asked him I said, why did you come back with 2 additional if there was no issues before? And since, as she stated, she said 5, why did you only come back with 4? I was expected 2 more. And I know that we were one of those contractors. He said, oh, well, I don't know, came up something. He said, oh, by the way, you didn't have your minority participation. Well, I'm a minority contractor in the District of Columbia. Out of all of the people, I'm in the District of Baltimore. I'm the only one that's a Baltimore City business. I'm the only African-American business out here. So you're saying that because I didn't fill out a form? Well, I told him, I said, I did. I said, you need to check the package. I even filled out the form. So, but I never received anything stating that I was not responsive. So to me, I'm taking it that you have 2 that should have been there. I'm not there. Why is that? Because I did the protests?
Thank you. All right. Any questions or concerns at this time for Mr. Lang? No? All right.
Yeah, I don't think my issue is for you. I think
And
it's going
so-
to be for procurement.
Now, with this, is it just me make a statement, or did I get a chance to ask her as far as this, why was I did not receive a non-responsive letter?
You don't get a chance to ask the agency any direct questions. You do have the ability to pose questions to the board, in which time the board can ask for the appropriate responses.
Okay, so with this, as she stated, she's, could the board, because she stated there were 5 contractors.
Yeah, I think it's important for you to focus anything you want the board to pay close attention to. Really wrap it around, I guess, some of the comments that procurement made about, why you were ultimately disqualified for this.
Okay, no, I was responsive. I am a minority business certified with the City of Baltimore City. And since I have a specialty trade, we do asbestos, hazardous waste. It's hard to find a woman business. So we filled out the form inquiring for help that actually does what we do. There's no woman-owned business that does any abatement. And so we reached out to Baltimore City, and we were actually later on, they gave us a name. So in case we were awarded it, then we receive it. And as the contracts document states, that you have to put your participation. So for us, yes, we're a Baltimore City business. We're minorities. We want to be able to help, so we're going to make sure we're compliant. But for us now, and with this contract, like you said, it comes around every 5 years. So for us a minority contractor out of Baltimore City to lose out because they said that we didn't fill out a form and say that we didn't have a minority participation for a $10 million contract. Is that justified?
One quick question I have for you, Mr. Lang, is have you been a subcontractor for any of the contract vendors that were awarded?
Previously, the last contract, Goel Services, is actually the one that has the contract right now.
Yeah.
They extended it and they weren't in compliance. They extended, and so there's 2 other contractors. And every time they go for the bid, the other 2 never respond. So Goel constantly is the only one. So we reached out to the other 2 contractors, like why? Because they don't self-perform. We self-perform. I've been doing asbestos since 1984 when I was in college in Boston, and I started doing it in the DC area, federal contracting, since 1992. So the experience that I'm bringing to my son's business and to the city of Baltimore is massive. So I've dealt with Goel since they were DCB. They were an Asian company out of Delaware. We competed against them when I was the project manager dealing with them, Goel Services, and they continue to be in the minority program. But then they got disqualified in the District of Columbia and they lost certification. Retro, I know the owner of the company. I dealt with them, competing against them.
So have you been a subcontractor for any of those
None of
companies? None of them.
None of them.
You've always been basically prime.
No,
You deal with the
okay, me, as far as an individual or?
No. We're talking now specific.
No,
to-
we haven't, no.
Hold on one second. I just want, so we're all on the same page. Specific to the company that you're representing today, your son's company.
Yes.
Has your son's company always been kind of lead and never a subprime for this type of work?
For those-
City of Baltimore.
For the city of Baltimore? No, not as far as a sub.
Okay,
Yeah, we prime. I mean, we do the prime work. I mean,
no, that's great. I just wanted to know. I just try to.
somebody with my experience, why would you, sub-wise, we were willing to sub, but they
Yeah.
don't sub to us.
No. Sometimes we've seen in the past where we have a smaller company that does work as a sub and grows into a larger company that is now a prime. And I was just wondering if there was any relationship or entanglement of that. in
No,
the past.
I mean, and like I said, no, as far as that, like I said, we reached out for the opportunity. But this is something that now it's gonna be closed for the next 5 years. And
Understood.
to say because I didn't fill out a form, even
Understood.
though I'm qualified, even though I'm, and the performance that you'll get from us is gonna be better than any other companies that, and our pricing is competitive. Because I'd like to also ask them a question, why didn't they give the prices as far as the bids? Because I know that our bid was one of the lowest bids, and it should have been, but they never even gave us that number.
Yes, sir.
So,
Thank you so much.
thank you very much.
At this point, if you could just hold on for a second. Right now, we're going to hear from procurement, but there's probably a likelihood that we'll call you back up, sir. Hello, Chief Brown, the floor is yours.
Yes, so I first and foremost, I hear the passion in the protester's voice. We have no vested interest in excluding anyone. It's our responsibility to make sure that we include, and anytime I can use my authority for any irregularities, I'm happy to do that. And I think my record reflect that. There were 11 bidders. 4 were brought before you today to be awarded the contract. 1 was responsive and compliant with NBUGOs. However, their pricing exceeded the budget in terms of the agency.
That's the fifth one that's left out.
That's the 5th one. All transparency, the other 6 were found non-responsive because of their responses to the MBE, WBE requirement. To the point that this contract was brought to the board before, that is correct. And it was because of this protest that even though they were found non-compliant, I felt that they had some concerns that need to be heard.
Yes.
Protesting is not an issue with the Bureau of Procurement. It is being heard. We value our supplier community, and that is why we withdrew it to go back and look at it. The buyer, they're trained not to speak to suppliers on the phone. For instances like this, we were dealing with different bids. Sometimes things get confused. They get confused with me. So we operate in writing. So in writing, we did notify the all of the offers that we had intent to award and make recommendation to the board, at which time the floor is open to protests. Those requirements were followed. And again, we respectfully ask that the board approve the recommendation of the Bureau of Procurement.
Now, when we talk about the concern of the MWBE compliance, can you talk specifically to that? Not regarding the other 6, but for the protester today.
Well, it's part of our mission and our vision for inclusion for MBE, WBE. So there was 27% for MBE and 10% for WBE. And as we all know, they get a chunk of the contract. This is a $10 million contract. I don't know if Chief Lundy is available to speak to why they were not compliant, but we concur with the Minority Business Opportunity Office.
So Chief
Yeah,
Lundy is
he's on
here.
the screen.
It's- I don't know. Chief Lundy, are you prepared to speak on behalf of this item today?
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay, well, as always, Chief Lundy's always prepared. So Chief Lundy, if you could walk the board through this particular contract.
Sure thing. Thank you, Council President, members of the board. In terms of compliance, construction, remediation, when we conducted a compliance review of their submitted bid documents, they did reach the 27% MBE goal, but for the WBE goal, they did not have a WBE listed. I believe, as Mr. Lang indicated, he did run into some difficulty. Unfortunately, in the documents he submitted, he did not provide any of the detail of the efforts he went to try to secure a WBE, and why that waiver should be granted. So he was not given a waiver for that WBE requirement and did not have anyone listed that would meet the 10% goal that was on this contract.
Understood. So out of the five that we are, well, four that we're talking about, one was excluded because of their pricing. But out of the four that we're talking about moving forward, all of them met the 10% WBE requirement, or were waivers given out for the four?
It's my understanding that they all met the requirements.
Ms. Brown, can you confirm that, or?
On February 2nd, 2021, C&W Construction and Modalis Retro Environmental and Gold Services were found to be compliant. There is no documentation to support they were given a waiver.
All right, that's two, right? You just
That's four, sir.
that you mentioned four companies just now?
C&W Construction.
Yeah.
Modalis
Yeah.
Retro Environmental and Gold Services.
Got you. Now, all four of them, again, met the WBE 10% requirement.
Yes, sir. 27% WBE and 10% MBE. I might have said that, no, backwards.
27% MBE.
And 10% WE. Yes, sir.
So we typically do. Okay, anything else to add, Chief Lundy, at this time? Yeah,
No,
we'll
sir.
call you back up, sir. Yep, you're gonna have plenty of time. No, sir. Okay, at this point from the board, are there any questions or concerns for Ms. Brown or as well as Chief Lundy while we have him? Sure, Mr. Comptroller?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'm not sure if it's a concern as much as it's an observation that we have consistently had protests over the last year and a half in which a lot of it seems to turn on the fact that people did not find out that they had been determined to not be compliant until the awards were being recommended for other people. And I'm very aware of the fact that we have a holistic procurement reform effort underway, and we are looking very globally at how we do all of this. But I'm wondering if, just in the interest of both saving time for the board and not putting so many of our vendors through this the situation, if we could have a policy shift right now in which, as soon as MBU notifies procurement that bidders are not compliant, that instead of just notifying the people who are going to get the award, that procurement notifies bidders that they've been found non-compliant from MBU right away, so that if there are issues that need to be dealt with, they can be dealt with before the process gets to this point. And at the, if there are such major issues that it still needs to be resolved by the board, it will end up here anyway. But several of these items that have come before us really feel like they could have been resolved by just people having some conversations earlier and not have to find us in this point in the process. So I guess that's an observation.
No, I appreciate that. There's actually, Mr. Comptroller, legislation before the council to kind of initiate a cure process or expand on the current cure process for issues similar to this. I'm going to ask procurement to kind of make sure that you look over the legislation, see if there's any things that we can add or enhance. But I think Comptroller Henry raises a great point. I know this is not the intent of the procurement office or anyone in the past, but sometimes we get protests, and I'm not saying this one, but it's kind of like, I got you. Like, you didn't fill out this line, so you're disqualified almost. And not that is not with this, but that's the point of that kind of procure process to put in place like other municipalities have. So I guess, do you have anything to say to that, Chief Brown?
I concur with you, and I believe Chief Lundy does as well. He and I have had conversations. It's just been a long practice that the suppliers are notified that they are intent to award. I would be happy to work on a template, which I've also talked to my operations manager who concur, that we actually specify, which has been my experience in the past, which section were you non-responsive with in the bid. And hopefully that would resolve having to come before the board and have those discussions and be able to articulate that to the suppliers directly.
Another point that this kind of highlights, and this is not germane to the concern that we have today, but it was brought up, and I think it's important of like, a responsible bidder. And what that kind of looks like and how that weight looks like. And a long time we kind of had this practice of like, well, where was the lowest bid? And that's kind of where we go. What we really try to push and will continue to push is, providing extra weight for companies that are based in the city of Baltimore, for companies that employ residents of the city of Baltimore, for companies that have showed a certain past performance here in the city of Baltimore, because we think ultimately that's the best outcome for the tax dollars that are ultimately paying for these contracts. So again, that's not specific to kind of the point that we're making here today, but I thought it's really important because we have the only minority business, I believe, out of the 11 that's based here in the city of Baltimore, who are Margulis. Did they get awarded? Are they awarded? Oh, gotcha. One of the two out of the 11, based here in Baltimore, city residents, kind of checks all of those boxes and also fits inside of the acceptable range of what we would like to provide. And unfortunately, it appears that we had to go down this direction, but maybe other weights would have changed things. So I just think that when we talk about procurement, I know the administration has been focused on like looking at procurement. The council has definitely been focused on looking at ways to kind of better procure. I think everyone on this board since we started last year have been working on that, when we'll continue to work on. But I think this kind of highlights that issue again. So at this point, are there any additional questions or concerns for procurement? Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Just thank you, Mr. President. Just really quickly, I just think just to hit that home, this is exactly why we're going through this process that the administrator is leading, because we have to get out of this ancient, archaic, mundane system that we have now that doesn't place extra value on that doesn't weight those things, and that we are all literally tied or bound by law to operate in something that has been existence before you and I were alive, not so much for the comptroller, but we have to make sure that we reform that and weight it in different ways.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any additional questions or concerns for Ms. Brown? At this time, we're going to call you back up, Mr. Lang. Floor is yours.
Yes. How are you? Thank
How
you
are you?
again.
So it appears, just for the record, that the office found you being non-compliant based off of the lack of WBE information. Now, I know that you said earlier that you were able to contact the office, and I think you turned in some forms, or if you could just kind of walk us through that.
Basically, this is the form. When you submit your bid, you're supposed to have the waiver, and you're actually supposed to show your participation.
Yes, sir.
And this is the form, and you fill out here as far as the women percentage, the WB goal. And that's our goal.
Yeah.
It's a goal.
Understood.
It's not as though that we actually had a contract and we didn't have the women-owned business. It's our goal.
Yeah.
And so in this form, you have this waiver. And in here it says, I have contacted MB office and they will be for assistance. So prior to me being awarded, I said here, I'll have the waiver. I'm willing for you guys to be able to aid me to find a woman-owned business before I start this work so I can give her a contract.
Understood.
I complied with that. I was responsive. Now, the contracting person, Mr. Anderson, I contacted him. He said that, and I sent him not by just phone, by email, and also Mr. Lundy by email requesting information. He said that he received an email of the people that were qualified, and this was in January of the contractor. At the time, he said once he received that back from their office, he sent something to Ms. Adams, and he said what he does, he sends out to the contractors a non-responsive email and a non-responsive letter. And it also says that in your contract requirements for the city of Baltimore. He complies. It's not creating a new law, I guess, though something. It's a practice that's already there. So he sent that email. He had asked me, did you receive your email? I said, no, I never received the email. I did not receive a letter. Okay. He said, well, I had given it to Ms. Adams. That's before I left, of all of the people. So I asked the question again. If that was the case, why did I not receive the email? And I also sent it to Mr. Lundy. I sent him email. I said, Mr. Anderson has sent you the email stating that this was the issue. You have my form. I am willing to be able to find a woman-owned business. All you have to do is help me. And prior to me being awarded the contract, because for me to not be awarded the contract, because even though I'm willing to find a woman-owned business, I filled out the proper forms. I was responsive to what the contract requirements.
Got
I
it.
mean, I think it would be injustice for me not to be given the opportunity to be able to fill out that one thing and use your minority business to be able to find a woman on, and then also to be able to receive some type of contract.
So essentially, you're telling the board that your bid is 100% minority bid because you have identified and are probably done the 27% sub-minor MBE. You were unable to find a WBE, and you filled out the forms in the appropriate times and provided those forms back to the city in the appropriate times.
I was responsive.
Asking for a waiver, which you feel like ultimately made you responsive.
Right. And then for the waiver, I asked him if you know that there's, so
Yeah,
you,
and then
you
inside the
rejected,
waiver-
you're saying you rejected my waiver, but you
Yeah.
never sent me something because it's a form.
All right.
So I should have received a response for this form
Got it.
from their office. I never received a response to say, I reject your waiver. Why? Well, why do you reject my waiver? Oh, because, okay, tell me why. Because you have women-owned businesses that you can recommend to me, right?
Yes, sir.
So why would you reject my waiver?
Thank you.
Thank
We're gonna, Chief Lang or Chief Brown, can you kind of walk the board and the public through that process? Mr. Lang, you can sit down. We're gonna go to them. Walk us through that process. I think the protester is saying that he ultimately filled out the form for a waiver. What's the communication back? Maybe the waiver wasn't accepted. If that is the case, does it provide him additional time to find a WBE? Does the city have programs from market research perspective to help identify appropriate WBEs to help and support him? If you could kind of walk us through that process.
So I'll start with the procurement piece and then I'll defer to Chief Lundy as to what his findings were because he reviews those actual forms. So there would have been an opportunity for all bidders to make correction, but during the process, we do not allow for, in accordance with the procurement regulations, a correction of any MBE, WBE submissions unless all of the offers were found non-compliant, even playing field. There were 4 that were found compliant. So therefore, that says there are MBE, WBEs available. Unfortunately, this particular bid was non-responsive because they did not comply, I believe, with the WBE.
Yeah,
So that's the waiver form.
So real quick, when somebody does a waiver and maybe the waiver is not accepted, does that mean non-compliance?
That means non-responsive.
That means non-responsive.
To non-compliance after the contract is awarded.
All right, but he is, oh, I'm sorry, non-responsive. So you apply for a waiver, the waiver is rejected, and that is deeming that contract as, well, that application, that bid as non-responsive.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And to Mayor Scott's point, with the procurement assessment and long history and the requirements in the city, we do not reach out to them in the middle of an evaluation. We're sealed-lipped until we make our recommendation to the board and advise the supplier community that we have an intent to award. The only time that we allow provisions to interact with the suppliers, which we do transparently and equitably, is when they're allowed to correct their MBE, WBE if all of the offers are found non-compliant. And that is from my office in writing that gives them 10 days to make that correction. That was not a fact in this particular case in that we found 5 compliant and 6 were found non-compliant.
Chief Lundy?
Yes, Council President. In the MBU review of documents, so when we get the MBE, WBE bid participation documents, so obviously we're reviewing the documents as submitted. If somebody seeks a waiver for a portion or all of the goal, if the waiver is denied, typically they are going to be non-compliant because of the fact that they are saying that they could not find that participation. So they will not have somebody listed that'll show that they will get to, in this case, a 27 and 10%. So if somebody asks for a waiver of a portion or all that goal, and it is not articulated why they believe they need the goal, or if they do not provide sufficient detail of the efforts they did to try to identify those businesses, that's going to weigh against them, and that typically will result in that non-compliance by not having those percentages. And as Madam Purchaser said, in the case where we have other bidders that were able to locate participation, that also typically weighs against the granting of the waiver because it shows that there is availability for those MBE and WBE subcontractors to participate on the contract.
Understood. I'm not sure if you would have this information. The 6 that were deemed non-responsive from an MBE, WBE perspective, was it all related to the WBE portion?
I would have to go through and look. I'm not certain. I'm not certain if it was all attributed solely
That's
to
fine.
WBE.
That's fine, real quick. And then from a procurement and Chief Lundy perspective, the 4 that are being awarded, is the WBE all the same WBE?
No, it is not. There are separate firms. I'm looking at for C&W Construction. They have
All four are different. Understood. Thank you.
yes.
All right, at this time, the protester, the board will allow you to provide any additional information or final remarks associated with the process. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madam Purchaser, got a new name for you.
Well, like I said, I spoke to him, actually came up here and to meet, because I had sent a request to Mr. Lundy to get some information. And he actually told me that they're not the decision makers when it comes to this contract. But in this situation, they actually are the decision makers.
Well, they're separate.
Well, it ends up being the decision maker on the fact that the decision to not move me forward, because I complied and I was responsive with everything else, was that they made a decision to not approve my waiver. So in this situation, they were the decision maker to deny us the opportunity as a minority. The minority agency that's supposed to help you to get contracts, to be able to help the Baltimore City businesses, became the denier to give me an opportunity, or give my son a company an opportunity to be able to perform the work without informing us, without any type of consideration. And like I said, and he still really didn't explain why. Why would it be that, okay, I'm going to turn it down when he has a list of people that he says, okay, I can find you a woman business. And that's what the minority is supposed to do. They're supposed to aid the women business. Here's an opportunity to be able to aid a woman business. So now you have 4, now you have 5 women businesses that can be able to benefit because these guys were able to help me find somebody to be able to comply with the contract. So I didn't get the contract because he turned down my waiver. And for her, the thing is, for me, is this. Like I said, you said you had 5. I was told 6. Now, I was told that initially we were approved, we're not approved, but to deny us the opportunity, and the thing is, it's not that you're giving the people the money. It's not a lump sum contract. All it is allowing me the opportunity
I get
to
it.
bid on a abatement project.
I get it.
And for me to be denied is injustice to the city of Baltimore. It's injustice because you're not going to get the service that you should have because no one can outperform us. You're not going to, it's an injustice to the city of Baltimore because you have a Baltimore-based business that's here. And I know when they all talked about C&W, yeah, but where's the location? But it's not a Baltimore City resident that owns their business.
Understood.
So you have an opportunity to be able to use this office, the minority business office that is supposed to aid the Baltimore City certified businesses opportunity, and we're going to lose it because of technicality. And I wish they would have helped me. They could have called me. They should have said something. They should have sent me an email. Hey, Mr. Lang, look, we can get you a woman-owned business. Okay, here, I'll fill it out. So I was in compliance. I was in compliance at the time of submission of it. And then during that time, before they awarded it, I could have been able to bring on somebody. But that never happened, and I was denied that opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lang. I just have one additional question. No, I appreciate it. I just have one additional question for Chief Lundy. When someone applies for a waiver, and I think you answered this earlier, but maybe I just didn't catch the answer. when someone applies for a waiver, and that waiver is denied, you do not contact the applicant or the bidder to tell them that they're denied. You just then work through the purchaser. Or from a market research perspective, at times does the MBU office identify potential MBE, WBE subs who could go and utilize and could be utilized for that work? How does that process work when someone applies for a waiver?
Yeah, so there's several things at issue here. So in terms of the waiver, for any whether you're seeking a waiver or not, when you submit bid documents and they're under review at IMBU, at that time it's now too late for my office to assist you in stating who's going to work with you as a sub on the contract, unfortunately. So we don't have any legal mechanism for me to give further assistance once it's been submitted. As Madam Purchaser said, unless all of the bidders are non-compliant with the IMBU requirements, there is no ability to cure and resubmit with a newly discovered or another certified business at that time. So that's the challenge within the legal parameters that we have with waivers. The communication is additionally as such, that based on procurement's preference and the way IMBU's decision is not determinative of the award of the contract, as you all know, as honorable members of the
Understood.
board. It's within your control and determination. And Madam Purchaser is able to recommend for award even non-compliant businesses if that's in the best interest of the city. So we're not in a position to say ultimately, just based on the compliance, that they cannot be awarded the contract. But once the documents have been submitted, we're no longer in a position to offer that type of assistance to identify potential firms. Prior to submission, we can surely assist and do assist on a regular basis of identifying certified businesses, assisting people with knowing whether someone is certified or not, to know if they actually will qualify towards the goal. I did meet Mr. Lang previously at the office. I've spoken with Mr. Lang on several occasions, including I believe that was the day before yesterday, where at that time, based on the conversation, I did tell him that if there was not the WBE stated there, that would be to the percentage, that would be something that would cause him to be non-compliant. Based on procurement's communication, we really do rely on procurement to make the communications, because that IMBU determination does not in and of itself say whether anyone is going to be awarded or not awarded the contract. So we do not typically communicate with bidders at the time of that IMBU review to say that they are non-compliant.
Understood. At this point, are there any additional questions, concerns from members of this board? Hearing and seeing none, entertain a motion.
Yeah, I move the approval of the 4 recommended contractors.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. And that concludes the business before the desk. We will adjourn. The next regularly scheduled meeting for the Board of Estimates will occur on Wednesday, June the 1st at 9 a.m. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. Baltimore, please stay safe, and I absolutely love you.
We are. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Baltimore City bid opening for May 18th, 2022. We have a number of bids to open today, and just to share the process we usually use, our staff have prepared the bids for a reading. Jim Knighton, my able colleague, will read them out loud to me, and you will often hear us repeat back because we're getting the numbers right, but we're also articulating them for folks that are trying to keep track of this here, and from other locations who are watching us on TV 25. So I think with that, we can get started. Yes?
Yes.
You ready, Brenda? Okay. Bid number 1 is for Recreation and Parks. It is contract number RP 18810R, Druid Hill Park Reptile Housing Renovations. Yay. And our first bidder, Jim.
The first bidder is letter E, Picunis, Pikounis, Construction Company, Inc. 1600 Eastern Avenue, Baltimore, 21231.
And the bid amount.
$2,408,500.00.
Can you read that number again, Jim?
Yep, 2,408, 500.00.
That was E. Kunis
Yes,
Construction Incorporated. And that bid amount was $2,408,500. That was 2,408,500.
yes.
And Jim, is there a bid bond?
There is a bid bond, and we have an original and one copy.
And do we have a second bidder?
Yes. Second bidder is Trison, Trison, Construction, Inc., 115 East 30th Street, Baltimore, 21218.
And that bid amount?
$2,399,900.00. 2,399,900.00.
And do we have a bid bond?
Yes. We have an original and one copy.
Great. That bidder was Trison Construction Incorporated, and the bid amount was $2,399,900. That was 2,399,900.00.
Yes.
Do we have another?
No, just two bidders.
So those were our two bidders for contract number RP 18810R, Department of Rec and Parks, Druid Hill Park Reptile Housing renovations. Our second bid today, B506420, Community Planning Survey Services. This bid has been canceled. Again, that was bid 506420, Community Planning Survey Services. That bid is canceled. Bid number 3 today is Bureau of Procurement, B506428, Furnish and Deliver Black Fill Mix.
And we have no bids received for that solicitation.
Right. Bid number 4 today is the Bureau of Procurement, B506437, Self-Release Motor Vehicle Immobilization Devices, Mobile License Plate Reader Vehicles, and Associated Equipment and Hardware, Associated Equipment and Software. These are technical proposals, which means we'll only be reading the names
Yes.
of the respondents. And do we have respondents?
Yes. The first one is IPT, letter I, letter P, letter T, LLC, Paylock, Paylock. Address 75-77 North Bridge Street, Somerville, Somerville, New Jersey, 08876.
Do we have another?
The number?
Was that the only respondent?
No, there's a second one.
Go ahead.
Okay, it's Rise Tech, RISE, capital TEK, Rise Tech Global, LLC,
Address?
1140 Franklin Avenue, Suite 206, Garden City, New York, 11530.
And do we have another?
No, just the two.
So those two bidders were IPT LLC Paylock and Rise Tech Global LLC. And that was for contract number B5000-6437, self-release motor vehicle immobilization devices, mobile license plate readers, and associated equipment and software. Our next bid is for the Bureau of Procurement, and the contract number is B5000-6463. And this is for fuel dispensing equipment, OEM parts, and maintenance.
We have no bids received for this solicitation.
Next bid is bid number 6 for us today, Bureau of Procurement, contract number B5000-6595. And this is for Chevrolet Suburban Premier 4-wheel drive.
We have one bid for this item. Bidder is Pacifico Ford, Inc., 6701 Essington Avenue, Essington Avenue, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19153.
And the bid amount.
$78,799.
That was Pacifico Ford Incorporated, and the bid amount was $78,799. That was 78,799.00.
Yes,
And that was our only bidder
that's right.
for contract B5000-6595. Next up is a bid for the Bureau of Procurement, contract number B5000-6612, aluminum sulfate.
We have one bid received for this solicitation. Bidder is Usalco USA LCO LLC, 2601 Cannery Avenue, Baltimore, 21226.
And the bid amount.
This was listed as a lump sum bid. However, the bidder submitted 2 item bids with 2 different totals. Right.
Okay. So in this instance, we refer this to the agency for review.
Right.
And we will not be able to provide a number because we don't have a clear total presented.
Yes.
The bidder was Usalco LLC. And this item will be referred to the agency for further review.
Yes.
Bid number 8, Bureau of Procurement, contract number B5000-6628, 4-wheel drive SUV.
We've received one bid for this solicitation. Bidder is Pacifico Ford, Inc.,
I should have memorized their address by now.
6701 Essington Avenue, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19153.
And the bid amount.
$134,220.
That was a bid from Pacifico Ford, Inc., and the bid amount is $134,220, 134,220.00.
Yes.
And that was for contract B5000-6628.
And we have an original plus 2 copies.
Okay. Bid number 9 today is for the Bureau of Procurement. B5000-6629 is the contract number, and this is for all-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive SUV.
Yes, we've received one bid for this solicitation. The bidder is Pacifico Ford, Inc.
Jim, you do not need to read the addresses. And the bid amount.
$41,999. $998.71.
We have one bidder for this item, Pacifico Ford LLC, and the bid amount was $41,998.71.
Yes.
That was 41,998.71.
Yes. You have an original plus one.
And our final bid for today is Bureau of Procurement, Contract B 5000-6649, OEM Parts and Service for Harley-Davidson motorcycles.
We have one bidder that submitted for this solicitation. It's Baltimore Power Sports, all one word, Inc., TA, Harley-Davidson of Baltimore. Address is 8845 Pulaski Highway, Baltimore, 21237. $682,500.
That bidder was Baltimore Power Sports, Inc., trading as Harley-Davidson of Baltimore. And the bid amount was $682,500. That was 682,500.00.
Yes.
That was the only bidder?
That's the only bidder,
wow.
yes.
Well, that was a very efficient bid process today. I also want to share before we go off the air that we have two addenda. Bureau of Procurement Contract B 5000-6470. Management of the Taxi Card Services Program technical proposals. Those are scheduled to be open on June 1st, 2022. And Bureau of Procurement Contract B 5000-6563, Aquatics Management and Lifeguard Services, that is scheduled to be opened on June 1st, 2022. Thank you, and that's all we have for y'all today. Stay safe.